Welcome to the Path Less Travel podcast. This week we feature the CEO of Real Services, Karla Fales. Karla, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're Facebook friends,
Yes.
and there's a little banter going back and forth on different topics. But one thing I appreciate about you is that you are super ingrained in this community. What do you love so much about living here? Like, what do you do for fun?
What don't I do? Um, I think that's been one of the most amazing things about moving here a couple years ago is the fact that I realized what a strong community there is here. To me, it's the perfect size community. You can be very active in so many different things, whether it's outdoor stuff or community or networking or theater, the arts. There's just so much. So I spend time doing a little line dancing. I spend a lot of time hanging out with amazing women. I do a lot of hiking in this area, although I have to work a little harder at that here than from Michigan. But there's just so many different things to do. And a lot of it does evolve around the people. There's just so many different ways to connect with people here. And I've really appreciated that. To me, it's the perfect size city.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you have one night to yourself, or you get to choose whatever you do. What is it in the community? Hard question, I know.
Yeah, because I would say for me, it's activities like the wine walk or an arts festival or listening to the 1985. It's something involving friends and people that involve both a fun activity as well as meaningful conversation. So it's that combination of things. It's not so much the activity as the people that I'm with.
Well, tell us about the organization here, Real Services. I mean, what you do, who you do it for, where you do it at.
Well, we've been around since 1966. Fun factoid: Les Fox and I share a birthday, and the organization was created in the year I was born. So that's just kind of a weird connection. I've always thought was a bit cosmic. But since that time, since 1966, there's a lot of things that haven't changed. One is, we continue to focus on meeting the needs of older adults in a meaningful way. REAL is an acronym, stands for Resources for Enriching Adult Lives. So that includes area agency on aging programs, as well as in 1985 we added community action programs. So those are programs that address the needs of people that are experiencing poverty. We've added to that a few extra things along the way. Another interesting factoid is we were the first organization in the United States to create a congregate meal site, a place for older adults to come together and have a meal. It's focused on socialization, but it provides a nutritious meal at the same time. That is now the national model under the Older Americans Act for congregate meals. So that's kind of cool. And we
that is really cool.
Yeah, it was just like, wow, that happened in South Bend. How awesome. Great foresight by folks. And then we also do Alzheimer's and dementia services in Northern Indiana. We reach just a ton of folks through that program. And our community action programs also include some basic needs programs like weatherization and emergency assistance, and we also have transportation. And we also do a lot of programs that involve activities for older adults, so health and wellness as well as care management. So we have about 30 programs that stretch from birth to death, and we do it through partnership. We do it through direct programs, and then sometimes we do it through granting funds to other people. Generally across about a 5-county area. Alsney serves 11 counties plus the world. And so, yeah, just a lot of folks. More than 30,000 people a year that we touch.
My goodness. What's next?
Well, it's interesting. Like a rubber band, things that stretch sometimes have to constrict. And with the change to managed care, that's having a significant impact on our organization. Probably one of the most difficult things I've ever done as a CEO. We recently had to do a number of layoffs. And so that was, I've laid off people before or terminated people, but never at, 65 people. So that really reflects a change that we're experiencing in one of our programs. But at the same time, it's presenting an opportunity in contracting with managed care entities, developing new programs that can meet those needs. We continue to expand in our Alzheimer's and dementia services programming. And probably one of the biggest changes over the last 2 years has been our focus on outreach and getting into the community.
Mm-hmm.
We can't sit back and think everyone's going to call our Aging and Disability Resource Center. Yes, operators are standing by, but people don't know that they need our services. They need to be able to connect where they are. And so we're doing a lot more programming in senior centers and community centers, in libraries, out in the community. I'm trying to connect with people that way in a more personal way, which really reflects the need to get to folks that are socially isolated, that may not have those connections within their home environment. And so we're doing a lot of things in that realm as well.
Well, we kicked this thing off talking about just the fun in your personal life. You've been here now for 3 years, 2 years?
2 years.
2 years.
Yes.
And it seems like it's fun to be here. Like you've infused this this culture with just your personality. Talk to us about just the culture here and how you try and kind of weave yourself and your thoughts into it.
Well, I don't take myself too seriously, so that always helps. And I think part of that is, working for a nonprofit organization, folks aren't here for the money. Folks are here to provide meaning in what they do, to provide value in the work that they're doing. And it's a complex and sometimes difficult field to work in, just like, having to lay people off is really tough. Particularly since, unlike a for-profit where that might be market-driven, for us, it was someone else made the decision that affects us. So I try to recognize that. I also recognize the fact that we spend more time with the people we work with than the people we live with.
Yeah.
And so, nobody wants to come to work and, hang out with sourpusses all day.
Right.
And, good employees are those that feel good about the work they do and the work that they are doing, but also about the environment in which they're doing it in. And so I've always tried to work from the philosophy of you can't fix everything, you can't make it all perfect, you can't make it all shiny. It's a messy business, but you can at least let people know that they're supported, that you're here for them, and that you want them to find value in the work that they do. One of the principles that I learned a number of years ago, actually comes out of the care management world, was the idea of person-centered thinking. And in person-centered thinking, when we're working with someone, it's the idea that they have the autonomous right to determine how they live their life and how things will occur for them. So in person-centered thinking, it's the idea that you take into account people's preferences, wishes, desires, and dreams in devising their services. You can say, you get services 3 days a week from 8 to 9 o'clock. Well, that's great, but what if I'm a night owl? I want someone to come later so I can sleep in.
Right.
That's a simple change that we can honor. I've taken that concept and infused it somewhat into our work environment, in that you have the rules you have to follow. You have your all of the things that you have to put into your personnel policies. Those things don't always fit every single situation, and they might not meet the wishes, desires, and preferences. So when possible, how do you infuse that person-centered thinking into the work that you do? And one of the ways is to give people choices. One of the ways is to not prescribe more than you have to.
Right.
And, to really, the other part of it is it takes a lot more to listen to people that way. It's like, well, here's the rule. Here's why it doesn't work for me. Okay, this is what I can do or what I can't do based on the requirements. And how would that look to you? And so we've tried to incorporate that into what we do. And then the other part is just, as long as people have an idea of the values of the organization and how they're incorporated into everything you do, to me, the rest is easy. If you know your mission, you know your vision, and you know your values, the rest of it should fall into place, because it's very easy for those bumpers to naturally occur of like, you're kind of outside where we should be. Let's talk about that and bring you back into alignment.
Yeah, you're talking. I think we talked about this last time. Was the book Simon Sinek, Start with Why?
Yeah.
And you're talking about you guys understand and recognize your why, and it allows you to carry out, your mission more effectively and impact your people along the way. The title of the podcast is The Path Less Traveled. And as you reflect upon your leadership journey, How do you resonate?
Well, I think it's funny. I always say I'm an accidental CEO because I'm never that person that said when I grow up I want to be a CEO. I was very fortunate to be in many of the right situations at the right time, but also to have people in my life that identified a leadership capacity and who supported that in meaningful ways. And I think we talked about it before. I was in a unique situation in which the CEO that I was serving with passed away. And I ended up in a span of about 2.5 years of taking over their position, even though that wasn't the path I was on. And, some of that I did because I had mentors and because I had people that said, I believe in you. This is how I can help you. This is, where I see you. And a lot of it is on learning to capitalize on those strengths and then picking things up along the way. I kind of think of it as Wizard of Oz a little bit. Everything they needed kind of came into being as they went down the road.
Right.
And that's kind of been my leadership journey of what the things that I needed were either within my reach or provided by someone else that was willing to come alongside and say, hey, I want to help you in this regard. And so I've been fortunate in that regard. The other is you just being open to always learning. I think if you're always open to learning and you have any propensity at all for leadership or self-motivation, you're going to end up in a leadership position whether you have the title or not. And I was always taught whatever you do, whether it's flipping burgers at McDonald's, cleaning out your closet, mowing the lawn, or being a CEO, do the best that you can do and learn everything you can, and you'll become valuable. I mean, that was my dad's lesson to me growing up is, I don't care what it is, do it well, and you will be rewarded for that. Might not come instantly, and the reward might be nothing more than I did a great job, and I can feel good about that. And sometimes that's had to be enough.
Right. Well, let's talk about some of the people that have impacted you along the way. You mentioned your dad, who's helped kind of just shape you as a leader and just as an individual.
Yeah, well, I definitely think my dad did just through work ethic. That and he had some rather interesting sayings throughout life that pop into my head at unusual times, and sometimes they're appropriate, sometimes they're not. Okay, most of the time maybe they're not, but they at least help my brain. But the other person that was been probably super significant in my life was a mentor named Pete Christ. He was a community leader in Battle Creek, had previously headed up the community foundation, and he was in a consulting role with our organization as the CEO at the time was trying to turn it around because it was in trouble. The nonprofit was, and Pete just kind of came alongside and provided me a lot of nuggets of truth. He was one of those people who, whether you knew it or not, he was continually teaching you. And he told me a lot of good things about myself, and he told me a lot of things I probably didn't want to hear. But he always made sure you were willing and able to accept that feedback. He was very good at that. He was just and still is, just an amazing person that has shepherded a lot of people. And it's funny, I go all the way back to, you think about people that have shaped you in significant ways, was an accounting teacher in high school who I was running down the hallway one day, and I don't know how. It's even more amazing in my brain and my memory as I came running around a corner and she planted her hands on both sides of my shoulder. So she basically caught me and said, I want you to use your gift of gab for good rather than evil. And I was like, okay, Mrs. Graber. And she said, 4:00 after school, you're going to join the business and office education clubs. I'm like, okay. And because I never had a ride home from school, I had to wait for someone that could give me a ride. What else was I going to do besides get in trouble? And so she said, we don't have anybody to compete in prepared speaking. So you're going to do all 4 of the categories. I'm like, okay. And I did. And of course, I didn't think of it at the time, but it did significantly impact me throughout my life, gave me tools that let me get in the room or get in the spot I needed to be in or shine where I needed to shine. And I don't think it's something I ever would have learned in other environments. So I always think about those two people, and my dad when I think about those leadership people. The other is my CEO that passed away. She was remarkable at just bringing people together. She was very good at diffusing situations, just through kindness and speaking softly, and giving people their voice. And so I think that's something I learned from her. That, and never be afraid to admit what you don't know. When she moved into her leadership position, she did not know the culture, the politics, or the dynamics of our community, which was a small community. And so she would say, I don't know this, help me understand. And whether it was, what do you know about the president of the community foundation? Well, at the time I was executive assistant. What would I know about the president of the community foundation?
Yeah.
However, I did know some things, how to approach her, what works best, what doesn't work, what I've seen other people do. And she was just very good at admitting, I don't know. She was very good at saying, I'm sorry. And she was very good at saying, I need help, which those are three powerful lessons that I think we need to learn more of as leaders.
Yeah, I think people get wrapped up in leadership of like you have to lead a team or an organization to be like some of us just trying to lead ourselves, let alone a business unit, a division,
Right.
an organization. So what a great example of words matter. Like the words that we speak into people, they matter. And obviously that was such a big impact on your life, that teacher grabbing you, and who knows, what trajectory you're on. But what words would you give a younger you? What advice would you give to yourself?
Probably some of the words that Pete Chris gave me. One which was slow down, just slow down. That was, and that's something particularly as an ADD adult, I hear myself saying to myself frequently, just slow down. I think the other is again something somebody gave to me, is there are situations in which you have to say wait, which stands for why am I talking? And you learn so much more when you're listening to others, and that's one I have to work at, because it's not my favorite position. I'm much better with words than without, but I've learned that there's power in the without, and so sometimes just listening to others you can get much more traction moving forward. I think the other thing, continue to give people benefit of the doubt. If you assume ill intent, sometimes that might be what you speak into existence. I'd rather be burned for trusting someone and giving someone mercy than not. And so I have to, and I think it guards you against cynicism, and maybe a little doubt and lack of faith in others.
Why am I talking? Wait. Good. That our Rotary friend Kyle Bossing at Senior One Care, he had mentioned an AI function, I think, bolt-on of Zoom, and on Zoom meetings it'll capture what people speak,
Yes.
and it'll also give you an idea of how much you're speaking, and it can be impactful for a leader to say, "Oh my goodness, I am talking way too much."
I think that's one of the things I learned coming here, because I come from an environment where I knew everyone, generally. I knew a lot of what was going on. I knew all the systems. I knew if somebody said, well, who do I call for? I knew the answer.
Right.
And I knew how things worked. And so it was, I've never lived more than 20 minutes away from where I grew up. So 2 hours seems like 2,000 miles in my brain, because I had never lived any place where I didn't know everyone, and everyone knew me generally. And so I think I learned that lesson much more over the last 2 years, is because you don't have anything to contribute to this conversation, because you have no idea who these people are talking about.
Right.
Those conversations we have, like, hey, so-and-so, don't have any of that. But it's also one of the other things, and Pete was really good at this. He said there's power in questions, that you should ask more questions than answers. And I think I've applied that a lot more in the last 2 years, because I don't know what people are talking about. And so I can say, well, tell me more. or yeah, I don't know that. What can you tell me about that? And so I think I've over the last 2 years have applied that a lot more, And my dad would, I'll say it in a nice way, but he would say, don't let your mouth overload your rear end. And I think the reality of that has come into play as well. Yeah, we can all do that at times, and sometimes it's okay because it's fun or you're with other people. But if you step back and wait and say, okay, I have that whole old adage of you got two ears and one mouth. I think I've just really learned that lesson more over the last 2 years.
Well, what's the hardest part of leading? If we were to get a glimpse into your seat,
People.
people.
People are what's that? There's a saying, and I won't remember it. Is if people are unreasonable, love them anyway. But we're people and human, and we make dumb decisions, and we say stupid things, and sometimes we don't do what we say we're going to do, and so it is the people part of it. I think one of the things from a leader, though, when you move from being maybe that kind of line leader to a CEO, I think one of the things I had to learn the most is not everyone is going to like you. You're not going to be everyone's cup of tea. Some people want to throw the teacup at you. And that's part of leadership. So maybe it's the fact that as a leader, we have to be a little bit Teflon, and that's hard. And so building an environment where it's safe, to maybe say some of those things that you can't say to other people. But yeah, as a leader, it can be difficult. It is lonely. It can be lonely. That's why I think developing networks and a circle of people that you can trust and confide in is so important as a leader.
Yeah, the book Stephen Covey, Trust and Inspire, comes to mind, and there's a difference between command and control leadership and
Yes.
trusting and inspire. You're talking about building trust within the people you work with, so that you can maybe have those more difficult conversations.
Yep.
We've talked about this in the past. You're a continuous learner.
Yep.
What does that look like in your world?
Well, the last 2.5 months, it's been taking a random class that nobody understands why I'm taking. So I'm taking a project. Everybody's like, why do you need that? I have a master's, I have an MBA, but one area where I was seeing a lot of value working with, organizations like yours and vendors and providers that do stuff with us was project management. I'm like, there's so many concepts in project management that organizes us and helps us think about risk, and that I was like, I need to know more about this because I don't understand what they're saying half the time. And so I took these 2 project management classes, and for my own benefit. I think the other part of that, of course, that was more academic. I can do the academic pursuits, but I think the other part is the more we learn about the world around us, the more we learn about ourselves. If you take a leadership class, or if you take, a meditation class, or whatever you do, well, even something as simple as, taking a line dance class, you learn you're not the best at something. That can be humbling and encouraging. It also demonstrates that you can learn, you can grow, you can evolve. And I'm learning that that's more important as I get older. But I think the other two is it sets a good example for those around you. It does get to that thing of, no, I don't have all the answers and I don't know everything, but I want to know more. And so I think that's been one of the things. Now, if I could just get up the courage to take a algebra class, I'd really have to say I've accomplished something. But
a couple final questions for you. What are you most proud of?
I have a lot of things I'm proud of. I mean, I think on a personal level, there's been a few things I've conquered in the last 10 years that were always those statements that said, they always started with, I can't. For instance, I can't dance. Never danced growing up. It was a cultural norm in my group that you don't dance. Well, now I can line dance. Still can't salsa dance or Latin dance, but I can line dance. So the other was painting. I'm not artistic, although people keep telling me stop saying that. So doing that has made me really proud. Being able to make a big change like this and manage it and handle it. But I'm really proud of my kids and my family and what they've done with their lives despite the parents that they have. But yeah, I think I'm most proud of those things that probably start with the sentence I can't. Well, I can't be a CEO. I don't have a degree. Well, check that one off. I can't I can't run. I'm still only probably going to run if you chase me, but I have done a 10K in my life. Checked it off. I'm done.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can do something else now.
yeah.
But yeah, I think the things that start with I can't or somebody has told me I couldn't. I think those are things I'm most proud of. And there's a lot of people here that I'm proud of the way that they have approached a lot of the stuff that we've been through in the last 2 years because it's been pretty challenging. But yeah, I think it always starts with the I can't do that, and proving people wrong,
Yeah.
or myself. So that half the time it's proving myself wrong.
If you had a billboard, what would the message be to share to the world?
Ooh, ooh, now that's a tough one. I think, and everywhere I've gone, I always have the saying that's on my wall right now, which is the live, laugh, love. Um, Live, love, laugh. I got to get it right order. Um, to me, it's there's something so simplistic about it, but at the same time very cathartic. You got to live your life. You got to continue moving forward, and if you aren't doing that in the context of people, then I'm not sure why you're doing it. And then laugh at yourself, laugh at others, laugh with them. I think that's always been it's just always grounded me, those ideas of you gotta live abundantly in
Mm-hmm.
whatever that means for you. And if you haven't figured that out, then go figure that out.
Yeah, yeah. That's the shift from the scarcity mindset to a mindset of abundance.
Yeah,
That there's enough out there.
there is, and it's not going to be the same for everyone.
Right.
You know, the other I guess if the other thing I'd like to tell people is try scary things, but you learn
What's
a
the
lot.
scariest thing that you tried then?
The scariest thing? Ooh. Well, besides moving to South Bend, um, yeah, I would say, yeah, moving to South Bend. And I think actually the other part is a leadership one, is when I stepped into the role of CEO in an organization that 2 years earlier I was the secretary for. That was pretty scary.
Right.
And so, yeah, you gotta try those scary things. Because they tell you something about yourself. They tell you about your limits,
Right.
because we do have limits. I'm not saying life is limitless, because it isn't. We have our limits. I'm probably never going to pass an algebra class, but you still got to do that. But yeah, I think those are probably the scariest things. Is walking in the first day as a CEO when everybody's looking at you like, "Aren't you the secretary?" And few people even said that.
Yeah.
And then I would say the second thing, yeah, is moving to South Bend when, I mean, my world was very much a cocoon. And so it was very insulated. I knew, everything was set and confident and sure. And so, yeah.
Final question. What's the kindest thing someone's done for you?
Okay, I'm changing my answer from the last time we talked about this.
Perfect. You said you didn't remember your answers.
I remembered that one. I remembered that one because part of it's because I struggled with it so much, and I had to really think about it. And because, I have been fortunate that I've had a few people that have done very kind things for me. The kindest thing that anybody ever did for me was when my dad had cancer. I had some colleagues that I associated with. One of them had worked for my dad at Ralston, and so we had that common bond. When my dad had cancer and he moved to the hospice house, one of the biggest things in my life growing up was baseball, and particularly the Tigers. And these two friends, they arranged for Dave Rosema from the Tigers to come and meet my father. And then when he went to the
Wow.
hospice house, they snuck in ahead of us and decorated his entire room in Detroit Tigers baseball gear. Included a bucket that had 2 beers and all this great stuff, peanuts, popcorn, and Cracker Jacks, for us to have while we were at the hospice house.
Wow.
And in the world of HIPAA, that took a little bit because they couldn't admit he was actually going to be there. So that's probably the kindest thing
Wow.
because they didn't have to do that. There was no motivation other than they knew it would be meaningful, and I think that's what made it so special. Was there was nothing in it for them, and it did take me about 4 days to think about who would have done that because they didn't, take credit for it, nothing. So that was the kindest thing.
That's pretty special.
It was pretty special, and I have an amazing photo of Dave Roseman, my dad.
And a lifelong Detroit Tigers fan, I'm guessing.
Oh, Detroit and St. Louis. So, yes.
Any final thoughts as we wrap up on just anything that you'd like to communicate to listeners about real services or
Yeah.
leadership in general?
Yeah. I think in terms of real services is I'm gonna show my thing. So we do this thing called the Real Big Raffle.
The Real Big Raffle.
The big raffle.
The
yes,
big raffle.
The real everything's real around here.
Mm.
The Real Big Raffle. And the Postal Service threw us a little curveball on this year, not letting us mail them out. And so we need to sell more of these tickets so that I can give someone $25,000 cash because that will be the highlight of my
So
year.
you need to sell more tickets so you can just give somebody $25,000.
$50 a ticket, and you can win $25,000
Wow.
cash. It's one of the neatest things I've ever seen an organization do, and so it was really cool when I came here. Like, this is awesome. Wish I could win. So yeah, we need to sell more of those tickets. So people need to get a hold of me and get their tickets because that's a huge payout. And right now, your odds are pretty good.
Odds are pretty good, I hear. What about anything leadership wise? Any final thoughts there?
I think from a leadership standpoint, I think leaders need to realize is they're never arrived. And
Right.
they've never arrived. And as long as you keep that mindset and some humility around it, I think there's always room for something greater to happen. And that's kind of how I function. There's always someone smarter in the room. So find out who that is and learn from them.
Well, thank you for doing this. Tons of good content here. Doing this again for the second time. That's it for this week's episode of the Path Less Travel podcast with the CEO of Real Services, Karla Fales. Karla, thank you again.
Thanks for coming again.